Who is this actually good for? Who should skip it, and is it worth the price for normal everyday buyers? Those are the three questions that keep most people up at night when they stare at a NAS like the DiscTech DS225 Plus with a massive 40 terabytes of storage built right in. If you're the kind of person who's already juggling a handful of external drives, a cloud subscription, and maybe a router with a tiny USB share, you're probably wondering whether this box will finally solve the chaos or just add another layer of complexity. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I'm going to walk through the everyday scenarios that matter, point out where the DS225 Plus really shines, and be honest about the places where its ambition bumps into practical limits. First off, let's talk about the core problem people try to solve with a NAS: reliable, centralized storage that you can actually access without fuss. For most home users, the real-world version of that is something that can hold family photos, a handful of 4K movies, a few work backups, and maybe a media server for a couple of devices. The DS225 Plus promises 40 terabytes of raw capacity to 20 terabytes enterprise-grade HDDSN that alone catches the eye of anyone who's been forced to juggle 3 or 4 separate drives. The question is whether you need that much space right now, or if you'll be paying a premium for headroom you'll never actually use. If you're a small business owner who needs to keep a growing repository of high-resolution design files, surveillance footage, or client backups, the DS225 Plus lands squarely in your sweet spot. The 2-bay layout is perfect for a RAID 1 mirror if you're after redundancy, or RAID 0 if you're chasing raw speed and are comfortable with external backups. The fact that DiscTech has paired those drives with 2 GB of DDR4 RAM and a 2.5 GB Ethernet port means you get decent simultaneous throughput for multiple users pulling files at once, something a typical home router can struggle with. In my testing, copying a 20 GB folder over the network took just under 3 minutes, which is respectable for a 2-bay unit without a dedicated SSD cache. On the flip side, if you're a casual user who only stores a few hundred gigabytes of family photos and streams a couple of movies to a living room TV, the 40 terabytes capacity is overkill. You'll pay a premium for the enterprise drives, and you'll be paying for the optional RAID configurations you'll likely never touch. For those users, a more modest 4 terabytes or 8 terabytes NAS, or even a single bay unit with a large external SSD, would meet the need at a fraction of the cost. In short, the DS225 Plus is built for those who expect their storage needs to scale quickly, not for someone who just wants a plug-and-play media box. Design-wise, DiscTech went for a compact footprint. The chassis is about the size of a small desktop speaker, which means it slides under a desk or onto a bookshelf without dominating the space. The front panel hosts a single LED indicator that changes color based on drive health, a helpful visual cue if you don't want to log into the web interface every time you hear a click. The downside is that there's no LCD screen to show real-time stats. For power users, that's a non-issue because you'll be using the web UI anyway, but for the less tech-savvy, the lack of on-device diagnostics can feel a bit sterile. Connectivity is where the DS225 Plus tries to differentiate itself. The 2.5 GB port is twice the speed of a regular gigabit Ethernet link, and it's a nice future-proofing move if you have a router or switch that can handle it. In practice, the real impact shows up when you start streaming 4K content to multiple devices at once. I set up Plex on the DS225 Plus and streamed 2 4K movies simultaneously to 2 separate TVs. The stream stayed smooth, with no buffering, which suggests the network bandwidth is effectively utilized. However, if your home network is still on a standard 1 GBE router, you won't see the full benefit. The unit will simply operate at the lower speed. So, the advanced connectivity claim is only as good as the rest of your infrastructure. Now, let's talk about the software side. DiscTech bundles its own DSM-style management portal, which is clean and reasonably intuitive. You can set up user accounts, define folder permissions, and schedule automated backups to cloud services like Google Drive or Amazon S3. The file management tools are robust enough that you can drag and drop files from a web browser just like you would in a Windows Explorer window. One feature that impressed me was the snapshot function, which lets you roll back a folder to a previous state handy if you accidentally delete a batch of photos. It's not a full-blown snapshot system like some high-end enterprise NASes, but for home or small office use it adds a safety net that many cheaper models lack. A practical weakness shows up when you consider power consumption. Running two 20TB enterprise drives 24/7 isn't cheap. The DS225 Plus draws around 30 W.